whispering in the trees. It's two cities and they're only.
The mayor has done some good things for the city of Hammond, and when he's right, I've said so. But when he's wrong, he never admits being wrong. He comes back and apologizes sometimes about stupid things that he says, but he doesn't admit that he's wrong. There's many more serious questions to be asked, and someone should ask the mayor, and nobody's asking him. And if they do, they either get hung up on, called a liar, he gets mad and throws a hussy fit. I want to know why some of these things that should be on the table to the ordinary guy like myself. I want to know why I can't understand why the Festival of the Snakes is not on the table, Legal Aid Clinic and some of these other programs, college bound, homebound, all this stuff should be on the table. It doesn't make sense to me why it isn't, and I'd like to know why. I want a legitimate answer of why these things are not on the table before you get to the fire and police protection in this city. That's
Unfortunately, the fire issue is a separate issue, and it stands on its own merit. You guys are one of the safest. When a fire breaks out, a call is made, those guys are sleeping in the fire station, man. Boom, they're up, they go. Highland, you got to call up. You call, guys got to get out of bed of their house. They got to run over. They got to get out of the bar. They got to put down the weights at the gym, get their little blue lights on, and then head to the place, get a coat, get a fire truck, sign the sheet, then they got to get there. You guys are covered in Hammond 24 hours a day, buddy.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point. And it's
those guys are, whatever they're doing in those firehouses.
They're playing video games.
They're making chili. They're doing all their part-time jobs. They're doing their paperwork. They're putting. They're making up a driving range. But when the call comes in, they march right out the door.
10-4, thanks for the call. They're laying around playing video games. The mayor told us so. That's what they're doing. They're lounging around playing a video game, making $100,000 a year. And they're not really making $100,000 a year. They're making X amount of dollars a year, whatever that is. And it's all those benefits and the things that are needing to be addressed by every mayor of every major city in the United States of America. Let's try him. Rich is out there in Hammond somewhere, knows a little bit about the city. Rich, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks. I'm plowing through the snow, Preach.
10-4.
One of the things that I recognize and that I've listened to is the concerns of the firemen and the federal law. If I'm not mistaken, they have in a flyer that states that they can't go into a building unless their relief is on the ground behind them. And if they can't, if they're not allowed to do this because their backup is on its way, a fire doubles every minute, if I'm not mistaken. And that, I think that's the crust of the whole argument. If people would understand, and I'll guarantee you this, if my son's on the ground and a dog, and any of the firemen, and there's a child upstairs, and federal law states that they can't go in, these boys are going in. They don't care. But
I can't
go in until their backup's behind them. And that's where the problem lies, because the backup won't get there if it's held up by a train.
I understand that, and that may have been an issue at a fire that's a very well-known fire that happened within the last year or so. I'm not going to get into the details or non-details of it, but that may have been an issue. I understand the regulations. You are supposed to follow them, but I don't disagree with you. If the guys are out there, they're on the scene and lives are in danger, I think they're throwing the federal guidelines out the window and they're going in. I agree 100%.
But it's still a federal guideline, and I would think if I was going to make a decision, I would definitely consider all of the things above, like you say, take all that information and then make my decision instead of just flying off making a decision that something's got to get closed and then move this and move this. There's got to be a way to work this out. And like you asked earlier, who strategically knows where to place these fire stations and what to do? Who can step up and knows the answer to that? Is it the state fire marshal that needs to be notified and said, hey, set up a plan for us? Because let's face it, Hammond lacks a little intelligence when it comes to that.
Rich, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. I will tell you this much, Rich Diambala, food for thought, and a regular at Freddy's Steakhouse for the Preacher's Jukebox. The city of Hammond, as I said before, in my humble opinion, the fire stations didn't go in first and then the railroad tracks. This is not the chicken or the egg thing. It's clear. The railroad tracks went in first and the city began to grow. And then the fire stations were strategically, with some thought, placed around the railroad track problem, the division of the city. The city of Hammond has failed miserably to address this problem, which in the long run, there would be a whole lot less money to steal out there, but in the long run, it would save the taxpayers a considerable amount of money if you addressed not the fire stations, but the railroad tracks. This mayor's been in there for 8 years. He's going to go on 12. Not only can he not address the problem and recognize the problem of the tracks and put the money into that and solving it for us today and for all future generations of people who live in the city of Hammond. It can be solved. It takes money, and you're going to have to step up to the plate to do it, but it can be solved. This is the chicken way around it. The firehouses are where they have to be in order to not be blocked and train locked. At least one station. Now you still have the problem of getting another station there. Wherein lies the problem. That's why you can't close down firehouses, Mayor. Because of the problem of the tracks. There's solutions out there. But this mayor and previous mayors, for whatever reason, have decided not to address those issues. It angers me that people in the 5th and the 6th district have trains in their backyard and no administration thus far has considered, and that includes the councilman involved, has considered and pushed for at least sound barriers, which doesn't solve the track problem, but it certainly solves some problems.